This build features content from a pack that I got for free through the EA Creator Network. And today I'm building a one bedroom, one bathroom home in Henford on Bagley, which was mostly just a build that I wanted to do to make some sort of landscape with like a garden because it's starting to get warmer here and I've been thinking about my own gardening that I'm going to be starting up soon, and I kept imagining like walking through a garden with like different stepping stones, a little picnic area. And so I just started to build that in The Sims because I don't have the capability of making a garden look that nice in real life. I would like for my garden to look more like aesthetically pleasing, but for the most part, it's just very messy. And I'm like really trying to plan it out earlier and like write down the different plants that I want and like companion planting and figuring out where I want to plant certain things before I actually just start throwing it into I have like a few raised garden beds and just like fabric potted plants, which is what I used to use for gardening, but it like the water, it needs so much water in those sorts of pots. And the first time I ever like grew tomatoes, it was just a nightmare and they never got enough water no matter what because of that. And now it's like I feel like every year I'm slowly trying to learn how to garden better, but I'd also like I would like my garden to look this pretty so that I would enjoy going out there and watering it, especially during really hot summer days. Because if I had a garden like this, I feel like I would just love to spend all of my time in it. And that's what I was really just trying to build with this one. You could see that I was mostly just starting with where I was going to have some of the gardening areas. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to have like this archway using the life and death columns that leads up to a small porch. And like you can see, I don't have a whole lot of space in the back of this lot. So the build is very narrow, but it's okay because I knew I was going to build something pretty small, because after building like large builds and having to furnish it and edit all of that footage, I was like, I need to take it back a little bit and I need to just build something small where the main focus is pretty much on the outside. Because that's what I've been enjoying building for the most part in like the last couple of years is like, I don't know, like the inside is secondary, but the exterior landscaping is sort of like the part that I put most of my energy into. And with that being said, I just didn't know what the shape of this build was going to be. I don't know what I was going for with it. I was just throwing things down, trying to find a shape that like looked balanced nicely and that I wanted a porch. And I knew I wanted another like porch somewhere else that would lead to another part of the garden, because when I was starting this, I was like, "Oh, this like the whole garden is off to the left." And then I have this giant piece of the other like front yard that I don't know what to do with. And so I was like going to have a side porch, but I ended up putting just a second porch in the front where you'll see it in a little bit. It really doesn't take me very long to figure out the shape and the roofing for this one. Like, I'm pretty sure majority of this video is just me figuring out the landscape for it, and then the rest is just very quick, which is a little surprising considering I don't know how long this video is. It's under 30 minutes, I think, because usually my builds are way longer than this. So when I was editing it, I was like, oh, this build is going to be a lot shorter, which is fine. I think that's okay. But yeah, here's the other deck that I had put because I was like, okay, I need to have more areas for this like large section of the lot that has nothing in it. And I end up lowering it down a little bit, which it was like, I feel like it was like a confusing approach because I wanted a hill sloping up leading to that second deck, but I ended up lowering most of this garden down to like have multiple tiers, and then there's an even lower part that has a pond in it. And that was like stuff I really didn't know I was doing yet, because you'll see in a little bit I pull out just a bunch of items from debug because I was just scrolling through and I was like, what kind of stuff do I want in this landscape? And so I just like pulled a bunch of things out of the catalog. Some I don't end up using, but for the most part, I do end up using majority of them. Like the one of the first things I pull out is like these broken stone steps that I think is from Get Together. And I was like, oh, I would love to have these leading down somewhere. So it's like, okay, then that like inspired me to lower the terrain down a little bit. So you like are walking up the stepping stones and then off to the side you would walk down these broken stone steps to more gardening areas, but instead of raised garden beds, it's just like the farming plots that came with cottage living, and then another slope that leads up to the house again, and then another area of the terrain that's like lower down, which I need a water because I picked out a water wheel. I love the look of water wheels in like any sort of cottagey build. And so I knew when I was like scrolling through, I was like, I'm gonna have to have a water feature somewhere. And yes, here you'll be able to see off to the side all the items that I kind of like picked out. I don't end up using the fountain or that stone pillar with like the bowl at the top because I just didn't know how it would fit in. And originally I was going to try and make this landscape feel a little bit more like magical and whimsical, and it just didn't go in that direction. Sometimes when I'm building, I'll like think I want to do one thing and then when I start doing something, I just go in a completely different direction. That's kind of what happened with this one, but I'm really happy with how the landscape turned out. You can also expect way more small cottage builds in the like next couple of months while it's like warming up because all I could think about is gardening in a forest. And so that's going to be a majority of my builds is like literally stuff just like this where kind of the shape of the build is secondary and for the most part the landscape and gardening areas is like the most important part that I'm like actually making. This build was also originally going to be sort of like my dream garden layout. And so I was just trying to build something that I thought would be really pretty and welcoming to just garden in. Then it ended up like being pretty inspired by my own house, mostly with like the weathered wood and stuff, because for the most part, my house on the outside is pretty like run down, and we have shingles that look very similar to the one that I'm using. When I had gotten growing together, I had instantly like thought that these reminded me of my house, and it also gives like a haunted house vibe. It's one of my favorite like exterior wall shingles in the game. And now you can see I'm starting on the like terrain parts of this, and then I'm able to just start moving all the pieces that I had pulled out that I thought would look nice in the landscape together, which sometimes I do, sometimes I don't do. Like sometimes I just don't want to go through live edit objects because it takes a pretty long time. This time I was like, yeah, I could sit through and I'll like go through and see what looks good together. And so I was able to pull out some items that I don't use often enough because I'm never like scrolling for that long. Like these stairs is one of the items that I rarely use because I just don't scroll the catalog long enough. I also usually forget about the water wheel too, unless I like type that into the search bar and I'm like am building something that I know I want to have a water wheel in. It did make for like an interesting landscape though. I don't usually focus on lowering terrain and having different elevations that go lower because normally I do a house that's like on a cliff or on a hill, and I never really do this sort of thing, but I was like, I could try something different. And I feel like the size of the lot made it a little bit awkward to try and raise up the terrain. This was a lot that I was trying to build on sort of recently when I was doing like a bakery farm. I think I had picked this lot and I was trying to make it work, but I realized how tiny it was. And so I knew going into this that it would be a little bit difficult to fit in a whole lot of terrain, but I really like the backdrop of this lot. So I was like, you know what, I can try again and I'll just like play around with some different sorts of terrain that could make sense. And one of the main reasons I couldn't use this lot for the other one was because I also wanted to have like a barn and chicken coops, which I wouldn't want that in real life. So when I was doing this, that wasn't even like a thought in my head of like, oh, I'm gonna have like a cow or chickens. I mostly just wanted to have a pretty place with raised beds and maybe some of the gardening plots, like the dirt ones. And those stairs, like, I was a little bit confused when I was doing this because I was thinking about where the Sims would walk to get down to the lower area. And because some of the parts are too steep to walk, I'm sure, like, right at the front, though, they would just walk down that way. But because I was like a little bit confused on what I was gonna do and if I was gonna have rocks towards the front, I wanted to make sure that I had a slope leading down from that other porch. And at first, I was going to do it so I didn't have a staircase and it was just like a natural slope leading from the like porch right down to the garden. But it would have been way too steep of an incline and it wouldn't have really worked and wouldn't look very good. Usually, when I do terrain, I don't like seeing the terrain paint under that you can't really change, which you'll see here. Like, there's the grass, but then there's that light dirt, and you can't really change that and you can't paint over it. So I usually hide that with rocks in the steeper parts, and then everything else I try and make it like not as extreme of a slope so you don't see it. And you could see some of it here from that staircase, and it would have been way worse if I had tried to have like an entire hill sloping down with no stairs. And there's like no space at the back of the house, so I couldn't even like move this back if I wanted to. I assume that it's like one tile away from being like fully to the back of the lot. I don't remember exactly. I've also been liking to mix some debug flowers in with that lush greenery, which you had seen off to the side. I do that with my next build too. I just started another build, which is going to be a shell challenge. I forgot that I had like people's shell challenges written down that I wanted to do, and I'm glad I remembered because this one is due next week. So I'll have enough time to like finish it and upload it, but I do the same sort of thing with that build. It's a really pretty shape too. I'm excited to do another shell challenge. I feel like it's been a while since I have done one. And my plan was to do more of them in the last couple months, and then I just forgot. And then I would like look at the date, and I'm like, oh, that's like not enough time for me to do. With this one, I got very lucky with when I remembered because I knew it was like sometime in April. And I was like, wow, perfect timing because I needed to figure out what I wanted to build for next week anyway. And I was like, yeah, little shell challenge, just very small too, but I feel like it's going to be a lengthy video because I picked a larger lot in Henford. That's like I think it might be the 30 by 40 lot. So the landscape is going to take me a lot longer than this one, which the exterior is more than half of the video I think today. I'm like trying to gauge it on my editing software. Yeah, I think the outside is majority of the video on this one, which is surprising considering how tiny the lot is. And I don't feel like this is super detailed. Maybe it is detailed. I guess I used a good variety of items throughout the builds, and I needed to play around with the terrain a bit more. And I guess I used tool mod more. And I've also been doing a thing where I take the like single planter boxes and I like to put them going up a hill. I did it in my video last week too, which was like my spellcaster craft center. And so I did it here as well. And it was functional because when I was taking a video of that one, my Sims planted in it, but it kind of like was floating the animation when they were planting it. So it is a bit buggy, But that one worked. I don't know about this one. This one is a bit steeper and there's less room around the planter boxes, so this one could maybe not be functional, but who knows. But I think that I had put the most attention into the left side of this area because I was thinking about sitting under this like floral tree with a picnic blanket and reading tarot after like tending to my garden. And like that's like if I'm outside during the spring, that's usually what I like to do. I have like some sort of like tree, like I don't know even how to describe. It's not cherry blossom trees. I used to have a cherry blossom tree, but anyway, um, just like a tree that's like all flowers blooming and it's just sitting under there and reading tarot or like having lunch out there. So this was the idea that I had when I was doing it. And I was originally going to do one of those other blankets, but I remembered that we had this like it's from Life and Death, like, is it a stargazing blanket? I don't remember what it's actually called, but I put two of them together and I liked the look of it a bit more because I liked the color palettes on these ones. The other ones felt a little bit too bright. And I have a really pretty picnic basket, which I wish I had in real life. I love that picnic basket. And a tray with like a little teapot and teacups. And I do end up putting a tarot deck over there too. So it feels more like how I would spend an afternoon in the garden. There is a nice weathered picnic table off to the side too, if you wanted to use that. But I really like to just sit on a blanket outside. I feel like that's the most comfortable for me. And I just have like, it's like a broken up stone gazebo. I liked having just random rundown stone pieces in this garden, so I have that in the back, and then I have the stone fence that's kind of broken up and not fully around the entire build, as well as the broken up stone stairs that lead down to the other part of the garden. And recording this voiceover and being 17 minutes in feels so strange that it took me this long to do the exterior. This is like not normal. It's like even my really large builds, I feel like it doesn't take me almost 20 minutes to get to the inside of it. But I was putting some clutter around the place. Like, I really don't think this is much more detailed than the other ones. And also, I like sped it up just a little bit more. Like, not by a lot. I sped it up by like 0.1%. And it took this long to do, but the inside will be fairly short. The most clutter I do in the house is the bedroom, which the bedroom's very tiny, so that's like also like doesn't take very long. And then the rest is I didn't really put a whole lot of clutter anywhere else. But yeah, now we're inside of the build and I was going to do a double bed, but I was like, this build is so, like, this room is so tiny. I don't need a double bed. And I wanted to do the thing where I raised the bed up on a platform because I liked the idea of having the bed like lined up with the bay window almost. But because the roof was inside the house, I couldn't. And I know I could have like played around with the roof and fixed it, but sometimes I'm on autopilot and I don't think of that. And when I have a problem like that, I'm like, oh, that's not possible. So I'll do something else instead of remembering that I could just adjust the roof so it doesn't go inside the build because it is possible. Sometimes I just don't think about things like that. And I was just trying out some different furniture I don't usually use. Like this is from Parenthood, I think, that dresser. I've like never really used that, but I thought it looked really nice in here. It feels like a very lived in, realistic bedroom to me. I really like the mismatched wood furniture. So the dresser is white, but the bed is more like a medium wood, and the side table is a green wood. I like that it is so different, and it kind of like matches well with the like quilt on the bed too. It's sort of like similar colors in there as the rest of the pieces of furniture that I picked out. I'm also using a new floral wallpaper from Business and Hobbies, which I really like this wallpaper right now. It's been one of my go-tos. That and like my old go-to is the paranormal stuff pack floral wallpaper in the white swatch. This one just has a little bit more color in it, but because it has more color and it's a little bit of a busier pattern, I mostly just have to use that as an accent wall. And I was trying not to use the same wooden paneling that I use in every single one of my builds. But when I was considering using something else, I was like, no, I really want to just use this wood like paneling in this room, even though I use it in every single build. It just looks so good. I don't know what it is about that one, but it's so good and it's a base game too. And it just works in literally every single build that I make. And I don't remember what wallpapers I use down here, but I definitely know that I use the same two that I used upstairs, and I bring in some other ones. I think I pair it with a white brick wall in some of the areas. Also, the kitchen ends up being such a strange layout, and I didn't even consider fixing the layout until I was editing the video. And I was like, Megan, why didn't you just like move the archway over a little bit? So you'll see later that there is just a stove that's separated from the counters from the archway. Because when I was building, for some reason, it just didn't like hit me that I could move the archway over a little bit so that the kitchen didn't look so strange. And it's not shown in the video, but I do fix it later. And so if you download this on the gallery, it'll actually be moved to a better layout. And you'll see a picture all the way at the end of the video anyway, because I did make sure I took one picture of the easy fix, which I'm sure that like anyone watching, if I didn't fix it, they probably would have been like, why didn't she just put the archway over there? It's like seems like such a simple thing to do. And sometimes when I'm building, I'm just not thinking. That's my excuse for it. And I'm sorry that right now there's just not really lighting in the bathroom. I I feel like I built this in such a weird way because normally I have the lights in because I'm thinking about that, where I'm like watching a video where there's no light in the room is probably irritating. But for this, I was just like, okay, picking out the clutter for this cabinet, and I'm really liking the that wooden swatch for the cottage living counters. I used that in my last video as well as a kitchen counter, and I thought that it was like a nice pop of color, which I was trying to do upstairs as well. I don't remember if I carried that out through the rest of the rooms, but I guess I'll see. I did remember having to take a break after I did the bathroom and like had like starting on the rest of the house because interiors are hard for me. But now I'm doing the dining room, and again, I was like inspired by my childhood and my house, and we had like a round table eating on like a porch. And so this is like I wanted it to seem like it could have been like a screened in porch, even though it's not. But there are those large windows that kind of make it appear like it could be. And so that's like the vibe that I wanted for this room. I end up moving the plant because I pick out a ceiling light that I thought you couldn't really see it very well with like the other hanging plant in the way, which I think was the right call because I really like the ceiling light that I pick out. Also, I put an oil lamp in here too because I had a vivid memory like being on that porch as a kid and us having just this oil lamp that was never used, but I would look at it and I was like, wow, I wish that I could figure out how to work this. And so I put one on the little trunk that is off to the side after. But you see the light that I picked? I really love that light. I think it's from For Rent, if I remember correctly. I don't use it often enough because it's one of those things that I think gets lost in the catalog, but I really like that one, so I made sure the plant was moved so that like there could be more of a focus on the light fixture in that room. And there was a couple other plants anyway, so it really didn't matter. I was also completely uninspired when I was making the hallway entryway. And so I was just trying to put some items in just to get it over with because I really didn't want to like furnish this area, especially that weird section in the corner, which I was like, this could be a closet if I went and I grabbed one of the clothing racks and I put a wall there and an archway. but even that felt like too much for me. We can also now see where the disaster of the kitchen begins, and it's because originally I planned to have the counters on the wall where the windows were, but I was like, that blocks the nice window, so I can't put that there. And I did move that archway over. See, I didn't even think I moved it at all, and I moved it, but in my head, I didn't want those two archways across from each other. And so I was just trying to accept the stove being off to the side, and I saw no problem with it in the moment. I was like, this is okay. And then I realized when I'm editing it, I was like, that looks very strange. I could easily fix that, so I do move the things over. And I was looking for stuff to put in the tower space, and I put a pottery wheel up there because I haven't really used that yet with business and hobbies. And I was like, okay, I'll put that in, but I don't actually know if you need the other object to like, what is it, like this, the oven sort of like kiln, is it? I don't know if you need that item to like actually make pottery, if you need both, or I don't know how it works because I haven't played around with the pottery system, but I decided to just keep it anyway because I didn't know what else to make the tower. But I really like the living room. I didn't put too much clutter in it, but I feel like it still looks really lived in, mostly with the couch that has like the messy blankets on it. That's one of my favorite couches. I think it's from Basement Treasures, which is a favorite kit of mine, so it makes sense. And like it also has the TV from Basement Treasures, which I put in literally every single build of mine, I think. And yeah, that's the whole video. See, the interior was very quick, and you could see I moved the stove over and it looks normal now. Just a very quick overview of the build because it is so small. Ignore the highlight of the couch when I was taking the picture, I didn't realize. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll have a shell challenge entry next week, which I'm excited to share. But yeah, thank you so much. Bye.